Welcome back to the Better Everyday podcast, where we're unlocking our best self one episode at a time. My name is Grace Garcia, and this is my husband, David Garcia.
What's up?
I don't know if you guys can tell, I'm like all teachered out. Today was our first day with students, which is always fun, but it's such a blur. Like it goes by so fast. But it's fun. Right now I'm in a space where I say like I'm enjoying teaching. Ask me that in a couple months. But as of now,
What is it, Rocktober?
Rocktober.
That's like your roughest month?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Isn't it, you always say like, oh, like we go like 5 weeks without like any days off.
We don't have breaks. And then it's like the honeymoon period with the students is kind of over.
Yeah.
And their true colors come out. And yeah, it's rough. But yesterday, I wanted to get in my classroom and we had like a bunch of meetings to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And no teachers really like meetings right before school starts. We're like, come on, let's just get ready. But there was a doctor they invited to come speak to us. And his name, I don't want to butcher it, is Dr. Ara Arzumanian, I think.
Okay.
And I actually like was moved. I was like, I would love to hear more from him. This is the type of professional development trainings I need. I came out feeling like finally they don't waste my time. It was very good. And I'm in a place in my life right now where I think multiple circles are kind of lining up, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So, for example, right now as a teacher, parent, as a Christian, even myself in like not my vocation, but hobbies as well. Like just what do I want to do with my life and kind of the impact I want to make. And the way that all the circles are kind of lining up is this theme of identity. And we've talked about it before. Atomic Habits has mentioned it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've all heard of identity, but why does it really matter? Like why are they constantly being brought up? Why in my life am I seeing this word appear in multiple aspects of my life? And so that's kind of what I'm talking about. And he talked about identity in an easy way for me to understand. Again, it talked to me as a parent, as an educator. So that's kind of what I want to talk about right now. Identity, what is it? Why it's so important? And what's the detriment if not having an identity, if not really forming your identity?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we're going to be heading today. So I want to start off asking you, let's do like a whole picture and then I guess like narrow it down. Identity, when you hear that word, what does it mean to you?
For me, I think it means who I am. Like, it's hard to define the word without using the word, but yeah, it's just basically who I am, the characteristics that I have, the characteristics that I believe that I embrace. So if someone were to ask me, what is your identity? I think I'm a person that has like a champion spirit. When things get rough, I don't quit. I continue moving forward. I'm a person of faith, belief, trust in God. A family man. Somebody who seeks knowledge. So like all these things are like traits of my identity, I think.
And how do you think you got most of those characteristics? Like what helps form your identity?
I think there's some things that are already programmed in you and other things that it's almost like how a little kid matures into like young adulthood and then adulthood. Like it goes through phases. So there's some things that are like underneath the surface at a certain age or certain experiences, they start coming out. And based on my experiences, like I was either going to have a champion spirit or I was just going to crumble under the pressure of how I grew up. So and as I continued tapping into that champion spirit, I just kept identifying with that and just being like, I'm going to keep pushing forward. I'm going to keep pushing forward. And so I think like the roots of it are in you, but when they come out, it really depends on your surroundings, your circumstances, and then also comes down to choice. because you always have a choice.
Yeah.
And we talked about that in the last episode, where there's something inside of you that is basically like, do this, do this, do this. Like we were talking about your calling or whatever. So like, be a teacher, be a teacher, be a teacher for your life. But every time that you have that feeling of be a teacher, be a teacher, be a teacher, you'll always have a choice. Am I going to do it or not?
Yeah.
Right. And so, we still have a choice of what identity we choose to embrace. And
one of the things that the doctor brought up yesterday was what we mentioned. And I was like, oh, he mentioned the Erickson's psychosocial needs, like the hierarchy. And if you remember, I mentioned in the last episode how you need trust first because at the end of your life, everyone goes through like despair of, did I complete my calling?
Mm-hmm.
Am I on my deathbed wishing I did more, or am I on my deathbed feeling fulfilled?
Yeah.
But before even getting to that point, like one of the early pillars of life as a baby is, do I trust my surroundings or do I not? Right? It comes from your parents. And then you go through multiple, but I was like, kind of like, oh my goodness, like you brought it back because we talked about it. And it was, I guess, a coincidence because...
You think you heard the podcast?
I think so. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, this is like educational psychology 101 or like childhood psychology, like, right? And so I was taught this in my undergrad or getting my credential. And so he comes from that background. So it makes sense. But so from 0 to 1, right, there's that trust or mistrust. Do I trust the world around me? And then from 1 through 3 is the autonomy versus shame or doubt. And that's where our daughter is right now, where she's like, I want those shoes. And I want to wear this. And I want to do this by myself. Like they were trying to practice this individual autonomy. Like, can I do it by myself?
Yeah.
And if they can't, then it's shame and doubt comes in. Like, am I good enough? I'm not good enough, or whatever it is. So that's between the ages of 1 to 3. Then initiative versus guilt is 3 to 6. Can I initiate playing with people? Can I initiate a game? Am I going to feel guilty? Things like that. And then industry versus inferiority is 6 through 11, which is our son is. It's like, am I good at this, or do I just give up? Like, can I read, or I kind of give up?
Yeah.
And then the one after that, 12 through 18, is identity versus role confusion. But you can age, like we're all going to age, right? Whether we want to or not. And you either overcome it in a healthy way, the stage you were in, or you don't. And so if let's say you don't overcome identity versus role confusion, you can be like 40 years old and that kind of creeps in, right? Where you're like, I don't know who I am, or I don't know what I'm meant to be in life. I don't know my calling. Like, why am I created for? And so just because you're kind of like out of that age range doesn't mean like it's gone. You're not thinking about it, right? Because especially if we didn't in a healthy way kind of overcome that, we can be straddling 2 different developmental stages, if that makes sense. And one of the things that was interesting is in that identity versus role confusion is like, how is identity formed? And he said identity, a lot of people want to say it happens between up here, like in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the world we live in, right? I feel like a cat. And so I probably am one or whatever, right? Like if I identify as something, it's me. But he's like, in actuality, like identity isn't formed here. It's formed with your hands. It's very concrete.
Mm-hmm.
If I produce this, I am this.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is crazy because it's like, what comes first, like the chicken or the egg, right? Like Paul says, you are a saint, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we don't like do saintly things. So that's where it's like, do things first, like act like a saint, and then you be a saint. Or like Atomic Habits, right? Where it's like, try to do these habits, but first you have to kind of believe like you are identified. So what do you think like comes first? Is it the chicken or the egg? Is it identifying as that and believing it? Is it, I mean, I think research, and we'll talk about it later. Or is it like, I'm doing this, so I am this?
I'm going to unpack it so I can first understand it before I answer that question.
Yeah.
So like I was saying, through experiences, kind of like the doctor said, like you experience it with your hands. Like, so I did this. So you're like, oh, like, let me try it again. And if you continue to repeat it, it's like, oh, I am this, I can do this. Right.
Yeah.
That's how somebody finds out if they're smart, if they're fast at track and field, if they're good at basketball, whatever. Like, and so I think there's certain things that you kind of just learn through life and you kind of embrace, and you, again, going back to the choices, because you can just choose to embrace all the good and kind of let go of the bad, or some people are like, I'm going to let go of the good and I'm going to embrace the bad, where they go, I'm a loser or this and that, whatever. So I think you go through a certain point in life, but after a certain point in life, it's almost like, at least from my point of view, you almost like stop evolving based on just like your cap. And I think that's where you kind of like, so I feel like, let's say last year I was at a certain cap, right? And when I read Atomic Habits, that kind of like burst my cap open, because I could only go so far on my own like experiences, on my own belief, on my own trust or whatever. But when I read that book, was when I embraced what you're talking about, where it's like, okay, there's things that I want to be, but I currently am not. So then the book says you must believe before you actually do it. And so it's then you kind of take everything that you've learned along the way up until that point, and you kind of use that to work towards growing and evolving. So in my sake, it's just like becoming somebody new that you haven't been before is not easy. But because I personally have like, I feel like I have a champion spirit, I'm a go-getter, like I'm very goal-oriented. I try my best. I always try to do my research and, squeeze the juice out of everything to be able to, grow in that field. And so I just grabbed that and I was like, all right, cool. And that's when me and you made the list of this is who we want to be. This is what our actions reflect who we are. And this is how everything going to change. And it was just, I believe this is who I am, because what really shook me from that book is that a lot of people go, well, I'm just not a reader. Well, yeah, you keep saying that over and over again. Guess what? You're never going to read anything.
Yeah.
You have to just change your vocabulary and your belief in your mind that I can be a reader and I will be a reader. And yeah, you kind of just do that. And then all of a sudden you start using all the tools and skills that you have before, and you kind of just mix it all together and just like, again, you burst open your cap. That's the way I see it.
No, I think that's a good point. But the book, I wonder if people who are saying like, I'm not a good reader, right? Or no, I'm not creative. Do they have to believe it first? Or do they simply, okay, you don't believe it. Who cares? Let's move on. Like, you don't believe it. Just do it. And in doing it, you can get that identity. Or in doing it, then you'll believe it.
I think then that's when we go to my whole analogy about flipping the switch. You got to get to a point where you flip a switch, because I always said I wasn't a reader because all I felt like I read before I said that were boring stuff. So I'm like, I don't want to read. It's all boring. I categorize all of reading into it's all boring. Whatever they gave me at school was boring. Whatever I grabbed from the library because I had to do a book report was boring. Like nothing was interesting to me. And so that's why I was like, I am not a reader, because I don't want to be a reader. But then you get to a point where it's just like, yeah, you have to just be like, if you want to grow, and I think from my perspective, you have to want to grow. You have to want to evolve. You want to have to mature. Maybe those skills are inside of you. But I do believe that it does come with discipline, because again, I always say whatever habits you've been practicing before are the habits that you're going to be practicing now. And it's very hard to break old habits. It's very hard to kind of embrace, like make room for new habits when you've, let's say, practiced 30 years of believing I'm not a reader.
Yeah.
Like to break that and start being like, I am a reader, and start reading and reading and reading. Like then like for me personally, it was like I had to find things that I was interested in. So like leadership books, faith books that were more like story based, business books, like things that are all like the moment the first chapter hits, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to read the rest of this because this first chapter already got me.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, so I think you just have to embrace it. Like there's some things that like I said, they're kind of latent. They're underneath the surface, but there's some things that you just have to be like, for me personally, I go, what does a successful person do?
Yeah.
What is a person that is going against the current, which we talked about, going against the current, not going with the herd. We've talked about how the herd, basically it's all about entertainment, you know, low key wasting time. Just like, what do successful people do? They don't do that. They do different things like reading, like investing in themselves in education, all this stuff. And I'm just like, okay, got to do that.
Yeah. And they're successful, you said, because of what they do. Like, so at the end of the day, obviously we know it's action.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with identity. Like if the doctor was saying like identity is not built in here, but is mostly built, it's concrete. Like you can build your identity. You can do something with it. What you do becomes who you are. I was just like, oh, this for me in my life, I feel like it's more prominent because I'm like, okay, how can I build identity in my kids, right? They're at this age where like, I don't want to do this. They complain about everything. It's like, how do I build identity in them?
Mm-hmm.
Having them do things now, like, right? Like reading, playing sports. So they know if they want to be that in life, it's like, oh, I have that under my belt. Like I am a good reader. I am good at math. I am good at sports. And then even with my students, how do I get them to believe in themselves, to form an identity in these crucial years? Because like 11 to 18 with identity versus role confusion. And then even as like a person where I was like, I'm not an early bird. I'm not someone who works out. I'm not committed. Like those were things I labeled myself with. And yeah, I read that book and I think we've said it before, like I'm a short like fire where I'm like, I read it and I'm like, this is awesome. Well, I guess that's how I was. And I kind of I don't want to say lied to myself, but saying like, I am going to be this person. Like, this is who I am. But it wasn't until I started waking up every single morning at 5 a.m., getting up, not checking my phone. It's like, now it's part of my identity. After the action, after the doing. And the reason I'm bringing this up, I think for the listeners, it's, let's say I've never been good at working out. I've never been a reader. I've never been an entrepreneur. It's like at one point you just have to decide, and you said like, just do it. Like flip the switch and just do it. Because it's not through the doing where you're going to become it. Like it's not through willpower. It's not through if I just think about it hard enough or if I like believe it, like one day. It's just like do it. And you might fail. It might feel weird. It might feel awkward. But through the process of doing it, you can, I think there's like something powerful when you start doing it where your mind clicks. And it's kind of like that, how you say that equation of, I don't know what's missing. Like, I know who I want to be. I don't know what's missing, but like, let me just do it in the meantime until I find the answer. And then it'll like click. It'll output a response.
Yeah, I think your desire, your true desire, not just a fictitious, just this is the words that I'm going to say, but your true desire will dictate the characteristics that you need to embrace. And once you've laid those characteristics out and you start practicing them, as you continue to practice them, that will keep reinforcing the identity that you are growing into. Right now, I'm working with somebody, and it's mostly just accountability. And this person is, mostly has to do with health. This person's like, oh, like I wasn't able to work out today. I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow goes around and the person works out and I'm just like, great job. And I've been noticing this more and more lately. And we always say like a budget takes about 90 days to figure out. And so there's grace given, right? When this person's like, oh, I can't do it today. I could totally be like, oh, well, you dedicated Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to do it. And now you're not doing it. Like you're not doing what you said you were going to do. But for this person to be like, I'm not doing it, like being honest, because the person could easily just be like, yep, I did my workout. And there's not really a way other than sometimes a person wears an Apple Watch or whatever, and I can tell like, oh, what they've done or what they haven't done. Well, when they don't, I just have to take their word for it. But for this person to be truthful and be like, I didn't work out today, I'm going to do it tomorrow. And the person's been doing it over and over. I just told the person, like, you are reinforcing who you have chosen that you want to be. You have chosen that you want to be a healthy person, and you are doing all the right steps for you to continuously reinforce that. Although you're not working out Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you're holding that accountability. You're allowing somebody to just, kind of look over, not in a judgmental way, but in a way of like, hey, encouragement, keep going, whatever. And the person's saying like the honest truth.
Yeah.
And I told the person, you could easily just be like, I did it, I'm fine. And you could just sit on your couch and be fine. Like, but for you to actually do that, I just wanted to put it into this person. Like, you are allowing your identity to be molded by this new desire that you have. And that's amazing because it's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about it before. Comfort is the easiest path for our bodies and our mind. And for you to choose discomfort and to choose accountability and just to say like, I didn't do it today, I'm going to do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow rolls around and you're like, I did it.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, you are continuously reinforcing. And the more that you do that, the more it just becomes who you are, your identity. It then becomes easier and easier because it's just part of your routine.
I agree. And I think even as like Christians, we can apply this, how we said, to any part of our life, health, education, parenting, like whatever. But as Christians, I think it is hard to be a Christian. Like, if you're doing Christianity, like for real, it's very difficult. And Paul, before I think even seeing like the transformation of the people, would call them by their identity, like who they are, like you're saints. And some of them in the church were messing up and he'd call them out. Like there was that accountability, but he never said, you who say you're saints, like, look what you're doing. He's like, no, you saints, why are you acting like this? Like, you're a saint. But it's through, like, how it says faith without works is dead. And I think that's where we transform into being a saint, not because we believe it and we're like, yes, Paul, preach it over me. Yes, I approve this, like I accept it. And people sit there and like, I receive it. That's so good. And people can agree with it, repost it, like it, share it, whatever. But if you are not like doing it, like practicing, trying to be a saint, like reading the word, setting yourself apart physically, then that transformation of becoming a saint isn't going to happen. And I think we just label ourselves and we think like, okay, that's enough. Like I'm called that. I am set apart. I identify as that. But then we're like, why are we living the same way? Like, why are we not really seeing transformation? Why are we not? And it's because it's hard to say like, no, I'm someone who works out and I'm going to get up and work out. Because the truth is, like, you might, like, no, I'm not someone who works out, but I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to do it. I am someone who works out, so I'm going to do it. And you identify as it. And it's so easy to put, like, excuses. And that's where, like, I try even not to, like, because you can say, I didn't sleep well last night, right? Or, like, I had a tough day, or my parents didn't show me, or I don't even know what to do. Like, there's so many options at the gym. Or even like videos nowadays, I get so overwhelmed. Like, what should I be doing? Am I going to see a difference? And we can make so many excuses that paralyze us. Or we can decide like, okay, what do I have control? It goes back to like my two hands and like, what do I have control of doing right this moment? And there was even a study, I think it was in 2011, and I don't remember. But it's called like the internal versus external locus, I believe. Have you heard of it?
No.
So let me make sure I'm just saying it right because I don't want to say it wrong. Yeah, locus of control. So it's internal or external. And they took people groups and they did the exact same amount of time, right? Different lessons. One group of people were told, you are capable of transforming your life. Like, you have the ability that whatever you want to achieve, you can do it. Here are resources, whatever. The second group of people were told racism exists, sexism exists, like all the isms exist.
Yeah.
And again, they both have the same like academics, they both have the same opportunities, everything's the same, it was the same. And crazy by how huge the overachievers were on the side of like saying you are capable, which I feel like education now kind of has kind of like lost its focus, because we tell people, and I believe it's important to look at history and see where we came from and see what's going on in the world and things like that. But I think we're so focused on like what's going out there, the obstacles, right? The news, everything is about like, these are the obstacles present. What could we do to change the obstacles? This is like what's hindering us. This is what's hindering a people group, an age group, whatever. But the biggest difference is you as a person, yeah, the odds might be not in your favor, but this is what you can do. It's not easy, right? But this is what you are capable of. This is like what you have control over, which is way more powerful in any scenario than looking at, why should I give up? What have I not been raised in? Or what is like my deficiencies, right? Or what does this society have against me? And that way, I think it goes back to the victim mentality, right? Like, in that sense, you're identifying as a victim. And so that is going to win versus what can I do with my hands to build my identity and like get to where I want to reach.
Yeah. And I think as you were talking, I was thinking about what's the difference between identity and mindset. And I think the mindset is set by the identity, like you said. So if you identify as a victim, the mindset will be everyone's against me. The system is against me. I'm never going to make it. Poor me. But I think a lot of it, it's very hard for me to talk about just because I don't know if I stand on solid ground when I say it. I feel like as time goes on, there's just more and more excuses being made of why you can't do what you say you want to do. And they sound more and more valid. Like, okay, I'm going to just talk from my personal experience and we'll see where this goes. But like at a young age, I had a stutter. And sometimes in this podcast, maybe some people like notice that sometimes the stutter comes out.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm sure if my mom had the money and she could have taken me to some specialist or whatever, they'd be like, oh yeah, your son's got this and that and blah, blah, blah. And that's one of the things that irks me. And this is where I say I don't know if I can stand on solid ground because I don't know enough information. All I know is like very surface level stuff. But this is the way that my mind works, where I come from a generation where if you had a stutter, my mom smacked it out of me. Like, and okay, like let's go beneath the surface of smacking that out of me. It was basically, you're going to outgrow this. That was between the smacks what she was saying. Like, this is not who you are. You're going to be successful in you getting rid of the stutter. Like, I would stutter so bad that I would be jumping up and down on a bed, frustrated. I couldn't spit out these words. And it was so frustrating. But like, again, as time goes on, you hear about all these things that like kids could have nowadays. And what really irks me is like you label them, you stamp them, pop, you have the stamp. And now that stamp is for life. There's no getting out of it. Like, it is what it is. A lot of the things, again, don't know what the information is, but it seems like a lot of the things that they get labeled with, there is no cure for. It's just like, you're going to deal with this for the rest of your life. Here's some like coping mechanisms. Here's some like skills that you can do to practice like being a little bit better. But other than that, you're coping with this for the rest of your life. Like, it is what it is. There's no growing out of it. And that's where I personally battle with like, I believe that you choose what your identity is. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories that say, well, the doctor told me this, or the psychiatrist told me that, or the mental person told me this, or whatever. My parents told me that, blah, blah, blah. But it's your choice. It's your choice. There's so many like athletes that you see, like the doctor told them, you're never going to run again. You're never going to do what you, and the person was just like, nah. I know that right now my situation sucks. I have what I have. Let's say it's a knee thing. Like, my knee's busted up. I'm going to get back. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to find out how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I will not identify with being cripple and not being able to do what I love to do or what I was made to do. And I really believe that you always, always, always have a choice of what road you're going to go down, what identity you're going to choose to do. Like, and it's very sad. And it might go towards what we were talking about with entertainment, where could it be that all these names are coming out with identity to, again, hold people down? For people to embrace these identities and be like, that's why I can't do what you successful people are doing. This is the reason why. I'll never be able to do it. This is going to be my life for the rest of my life. And that's so sad.
Yeah.
That's super sad. And like, I want to like grab all those people, again, from my probably big bias and ignorance, maybe. Just like, you can get out of this. There is a way. There's people that have done it. And for me, it's sad. Like, I do believe there's things that, you know, is out of our control, and maybe it is supposed to be part of our story, but I still believe like whatever it is, it's like you can get to a certain level where you can start inspiring people and be like, I had this, but even though I had this is what my life became. And I mean, some people can be Christian and be like, thanks to God. Other people can be like, from my own perseverance, whatever it is. But it still inspires people to be like, you don't have to be in that hole that you're sitting in right now. You don't have to identify as just a person that's just lame for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Like, you can identify as a person that can champion through and make something of their life. And I do believe that I think there's a lot of need for inspiration nowadays. And I do believe that when the world sees it, they embrace it. They go, oh my gosh, like, you've helped me so much. Like, you go into a comment section of like some sort of like podcast that's uplifting or like a testimony style or whatever. You'll have a lot of comments. Oh my gosh, I went through the same thing, and thank you for sharing your story because it gives me hope that I can get there one day or whatever. Like, because there's a lot of people that are just like, I'm doomed.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of like the Christian culture as well. That what we should be doing is spreading that light of like, hey, you're in a dark place, but here's this light of hope. Like, you can get out of it. And yeah, it's sad for people to embrace those certain identities where they're just like, I can't. And I do believe that some people embrace it for comfortability. I think they know that they can get out of whatever it is that they're in, but they're just like, I have an excuse to just sit here now. I don't got to do nothing. I'm fine. Go through my whole life. I have this excuse. And I've had like, I remember I had this one friend back in Canada. He had his dad, and his dad was on permanent disability, and he would get mad at his dad. Like, I know this dude can work. I know this dude could pull his own weight. And he's over there just waving the flag of disability and just sitting on his butt all day at home, just doing nothing. And we get mad at him, just like, nah, bro, like, come on. And it's just like, that's what I feel like a lot of people do as well.
Yeah. And you see people with disabilities in history who champion forward and break records and do things for society. And going back to what you said, I think that's one of the dangers of how you said labeling at such a young age before that identity like versus role confusion stage. Because if that label is on a kid, especially when they haven't done much with their life, like to concrete build their identity, and that's being told, and that's what they're going to do and act now based off of that label because they haven't yet formed their identity. And so it's very, I think, a slippery slope to tell kids as parents or doctors or whatever, like, you are this, because they haven't experienced life. They haven't like seen what they are capable of, what they do. And so now they're seeing world through that lens, through that label that they just put on.
Yeah.
Which is so much harder to overcome than if they had no idea. And it's like, the sky's the limit, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, life will then, based off of them experiencing, will show them like, this is maybe your limit or what. But it's better, I think, to try on your own without those boundaries. But I do agree. I see so many people use it, or like I don't think, I don't know. I wonder like if, it's hard to say because I haven't been put in those shoes, but if they didn't have the label, would they still be in that situation? I think it's hard to tell, right?
And honestly, as I'm thinking about it right now, I'm actually also picturing, like, let's say somebody hears this, and then I could see people in the comment just be like, well, what about the person that like really can't do anything about it? And you're the parent telling the kid, like, you can do it, you can do it. And this kid has like this weight on him that just like, but I can't, and his whole life will go through feeling like less than because his parents always believed he could do more, but he just never had the gas to do it. There's that too, and that's why I said, like, I'm probably speaking like completely out of ignorance.
Yeah.
But I know that there's cases of people like, you're done, it's over, stamp of like done, and they have overcome it, and that's where I'm coming from. And I think I just tap into that more because of my characteristic of like that. I just like that pet champion spirit, right?
Yeah.
And there's a story that I read of David Goggins. His story is somewhat similar to mine, but much worse, much worse. He came into poverty. He was in a predominantly white area that he lived in. His mom would get abused. Just like a lot of bad stuff that he went through, racism. And long story short, he was an adult and he was fat. He was like, I forget how tall he is, but he's a somewhat tall person, maybe 5'10" or something like that, 5'11", 6 foot, whatever. But he was big. Like, let's say, like, I don't remember the exact size, but let's say 300 to 400 pounds. So he was a big boy.
Yeah.
And basically, it came to a point in his life where he looked himself in the mirror and he just said, you're a fat. He just called himself a bunch of names. But he said that moment right there was his rock bottom. He's like, my life is changing. And that's when he went into, I think it was the Navy SEALs or the Army. And he went in, he failed. He just kept going and going and going. Yeah. And to the point that something changed in him. So again, he grew up in this way. He kind of identified it until it came to a breaking point where he's like, this is not who I want to be anymore. And he chose, that's why I said the switch flipped in him. And so the new desire came up with a new list of characteristics that he needed to embrace to be that identity. And that's what he did. And he went through hell. He went through this thing called Hell Week, I think 3 times before he finally passed it. He would get pneumonia. He had some pain in his knees or something like that. He destroyed his legs. Yeah. Right now, I don't know for how long, but it's been years where he has no cartilage in his legs. Dang. But this dude still runs 250 miles nonstop. He's run these ultra marathons. He's run these things where you go around and around until you're the last one standing. It's just sheer will, right? And his story, just like, there's so many things, and he calls it callousing the mind. And he's just like, you just got to callous the mind. There's pain that comes in. You got to callous your mind, and you got to keep moving forward because you want to be who you say you want to be. Go do it, no matter what, no matter the pain. And it's a little more brusco,
extreme.
Right? Extreme, yeah. Like, I think me and you are more like, yeah, we're about that life, but like, hey, let's be healthy along the way as well. Let's tap into our emotions, But in the book that I read, he was just like all in, right? And he embraces that. Till this day, he embraces that. And what you see there is like, this is who you could have been your whole life. And you had every excuse to be that person. And it's like, no, there's a day that all changed. The light switched. And it's just like, I'm not that person anymore. This is who I am. And then, like you said, years go by and you look back, the last 10 years, this is who I am. All my actions and all my characteristics prove who I am.
Yeah. And that's where I'm trying to get to. Like, we've said it in one of the earlier podcasts, like, I'm not a clean person. I want to be. I want to identify myself as someone who maintains the house. I want to identify myself as an early riser, like productive. And like, we've been doing that. And I think I personally have seen the confidence in myself where the more I get like the ball running, the more confidence I'm like, I can do this. Like, this is who I am. Like, oh, okay, I'm becoming like the person I want to be. But like it has to have like a before and after. Like, what am
Yeah.
I doing different? Because I've for so long been saying, like, I want to be this person. Like, who doesn't say, like, oh, I wish I could wake up early and work out and read my Bible, right? And like, make sure I'm not wasting my time. Like, in my mind, I never not wanted to be that, right? I never dreamed of, oh, I'm just gonna wake up late, not work out, not read my Bible, just see where life takes me. Like, I didn't dream of that, but that's just what is it? Like where everyone's headed. Like, that's just the flow. And so obviously I always wanted to do that, but it wasn't until like breaking it down. What can I do? Because it's not enough to just say, I want that. On Monday, I'm going to get there. This summer vacation, when I reset, I'm going to do it. Like, that's not enough to say it. It's something that flipped the switch. Okay, what's the action step? What am I going to do now that's going to make me that person? And then as soon as I start exercising it, again, my confidence goes up. And I'm like, this is who I am. And just seeing it in a short span, what has it been, like 6 months that we've been reading Atomic Habits and trying to be conscious?
Since January, yeah.
And not every week has been like perfect, but it's definitely easy. Like, once I fall out of routine, like to come back in as if nothing happened and add more onto our routine. And it's been beautiful to witness. And I think that's why I get so excited and like, come on, people, like, if I could do it, you could do it.
Yeah.
Because I see how like my identity is like, nah, I'm someone who's productive. I'm someone who doesn't waste my time. I'm someone who, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I personally love that feeling.
So would you say that around Atomic Habits was when you chose to change? Was that your catalyst? Was that your light switch?
I think so.
And so from January till now, we're now in August, 8 months. Do you identify as a clean person?
I do.
As an organized person?
Mm-hmm.
And I 100% back you up. 100% I could say, like, that's who you are. Because, yeah, I would reinforce that January was your switch moment. And the crazy thing is, before you used to try to do things, and I remember you would try it and you would do it for 1 week. And the whole week you'd be like, David, you see? Did you see? Did you see? Did you see? Did you see? Give me affirmation. Give me affirmation. I'd be like, give me some longevity, homegirl. Like, ask me in a month. And usually it wouldn't last a month. And I think it that shows what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
It's not a true light switch. I don't really understand that part. And not because I haven't done it myself, but just like, I wonder if a lot of us just go like, I want to do this because I know it's the right thing, but I don't really feel like doing it. Because I feel like when the light switches, there's like an alignment that happens in your life. There's like understanding of why I'm doing it. There's a desire that I want to do it. There's just like your whole body, your mind, your soul, your spirit all just says, we are going to do this. But I feel like when we don't really do that, it's just words. It's just like, in my mind, I know it's the right thing, so I'm going to speak it out. Like, how many people go like, I'm going to start on Monday to be healthy. Monday rolls around and they do it, and it lasted until Friday. And then the weekend rolls around, and guess what? That's your biggest test. And you mess up. And you're like, oh, on Monday I start all over again. And there's no like longevity to it.
Yeah.
But like, you did it on January. We made our list. You're like, this is what I want to do. And so much so that just recently you started school. You just said today was your first day of school. Yeah. On Sunday, you made the family sit down and you were like, you were like, we're going to plan this thing out. We need to be efficient. We need to be good. Here's the things that we want to do with our family. Here's the things that we want to accomplish. And you even prayed before because you were scared, I guess, because you thought there was going to be pushback from
or like
myself
just tension.
Or the kids. Because we were basically telling the kids, like, you don't get unlimited tablets anymore. There's a certain time that you get. That's it. And to be able even to unlock the tablet, you got to do all these things before. And you were like, hey, I don't like the way that we're doing the cleaning of the house. I don't like the way that we're doing, like, how I'm putting the kids to sleep or whatever, right? And that was, like, surprising and proud for me. And so we complimented each other for sure. because you were like writing it down and you had like one thing on like this side of the paper, then another thing on the other side of the paper, and then
I
I'm
take
like,
notes horribly. I'm just like scribbly
yeah, and then I'm
scrabble.
like, homework, here's what you gotta do. You gotta block it off, put all the times
Yeah.
and each person, whatever, and you did it. And I mean, we're only on day 3, but I feel like we're being very efficient.
Yeah.
The kids know what the expectations are. We know what the expectations are. There is no like, the only thing that could really stir it up is like the last 2 days I've had to work overtime. So like it throws off the schedule a little bit, but I let you know and we kind of adjust or whatever, or you adjust. But the point is the kids know exactly what they have to do in the morning. They know exactly what they have to do when they come back home. They know exactly what they have to do when we're both home.
Yeah.
They know exactly what time the food's coming. They know exactly what time we got to practice soccer or whatever. And that to me is like a testament of like you have fully embraced that was not you before,
No.
but it's you now. And like I've seen you hustle and be organized with your TikTok. Say that you're gonna do it 3 times a day, and you do it 3 times a day. You check all your emails, which I check sometimes, and you have like 99 emails in one day, and I'm just like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Then you try to like make time to comment back to all the people, like, but I see you go, okay, when am I going to do this? All right, I have some time at work when I could do this. Okay, I could stay a little bit over. Okay, if I stay a little bit over, then this is how my rest of the day is going to look like. And you like try to like, you're budgeting your time.
Mm-hmm.
And I see you being way more efficient, way more productive. And for the most part, you're a lot more happier. There is times where like it really packs on a lot and you could tell like, you know, you're a little bit tense.
Yeah.
But I think you would be a lot more tense if you didn't have a plan and you were just scrambling like, I don't know when I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
At least now you know when you need to do everything and it's just like you're knocking it out. But yeah, I really commend you for flipping that switch and, you know, embracing that identity, and that's who you are now.
Thank you. I think coming from you, like if people don't know you, they'd be like, oh, but coming from the people who know you know, like that's a big compliment from you because you're the itinerary guy, block schedule guy. Like that's you.
Mm-hmm.
So you being that and seeing it in someone and saying like, hey, you're like that. You're kind of like me. For me, it's a big deal. So thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And I think it, like, I would love to have said like from January, boom, I did that in a day. But I think that's maybe, and I would love to hear what you have to say about that because so many people, and I did that before in January. It'd be like New Year's resolutions. I'm deciding I'm going to be healthy. I'm deciding I'm going to be clean. I'm just going to do it. Like that never worked for me. It was maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then boom, I go back to where I came from. But I think the main thing that helped me is I focused like just my mornings. Like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on my mornings.
Mm-hmm.
I got my mornings down to a T. Now I'm like, okay, first it was like TikTok, right? Like, let me be consistent with TikTok.
Yeah.
Then it was, okay, let me be consistent with my mornings. And then it was like, okay, how can my afternoons, like, how can I be productive? And then it was like, okay, this isn't working. How can I have these goals and how can my life kind of withstand these goals? Because we try to just add without making adjustments to our life. And so there's no foundation. It's just nothing can sustain your actions or your desires. And so I think that slow build of like slowly changing my life of like, okay, this is who I am, slowly and not going from like 1 to 100 where I can't be sustained that. I think that's what helped me. And so it was like that gradual and it's just like rolling the ball and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And it's like, all right, this is who I am now. We're going full force.
Yeah.
And I personally don't see it going back. To be honest, yesterday I think it was like a break moment because you texted me saying, hey, I'm going to come late. And it was like 2 hours past the schedule or whatever. And I was like, okay, like I can just totally use this as an excuse to not abide by this schedule. Like it's not my fault. Like I saw a way out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's going to be difficult for me to entertain the kids, like both at the same time. So, but I was like, no, like this is I knew that if yesterday I decided to not do it, that's it. Like it was going to be so hard to get back on the wagon, you know? So I was like, I need to, even if I don't feel like it, I'm tired. Like I have it's first day of school tomorrow. I'm exhausted. Nope. Like this is not going to be an excuse. And same thing today. I even thought about it. Like I wonder if I can tell David I'm exhausted with my first day and get out of the podcast, like all this stuff. But I know there's certain decisions that you know. Like if you just say no right now, you might justify it. Like it's just today. Like it's just gonna take you out of the loop. And it's that those defining moments of strengthening your muscle is building your identity and saying, regardless of any excuse that can come up that's valid or not, this is who you are. And so stick to it. So I think it's definitely easier now being this person than it was.
And as you practice your habits, it's kind of like the analogy of working out. You're working out those muscles and you're getting stronger. And what I'm noticing with you is you're also getting more confident in that identity of who you are. Because again, I compare the old Grace to this new one.
Yeah.
The old one would be like, this is the right thing to do. I'm going to do it. But I need the constant affirmation. There was an insecurity to it. Like, David, look. Am I? And then like a month would go like by, and I guess, I don't know how you want to see it, but I'd be like, I told you, you weren't going to continue forward. But now like, you're not like that. There's security and confidence with you where you don't go like, you see, do you see? Give me my gold star. Give me my check mark. Give me like, it's just like, no, this is who I am. And as you practice it, I see the confidence growing. I see the security growing. Like you're turning into like a boss lady, like a little CEO. That's honestly what I see.
Yeah.
And like that you walk around more confident. And that's what I'm so happy about. It's like before you were like very insecure, like for everything. You had to like, I need it.
Yeah.
And like now you're just like, obviously, who doesn't like words of affirmation, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying like I'm not giving you any more, but like it's not like fill my cup. It's going empty. Like every day, you know, like you used to like you used to try to twist my arm every day with like the man is new every day.
I still believe in that.
But yeah, it's very beautiful for you like to see you flourish in that and like be like spread those roots in that identity and become confident. And I truly believe like as you practice those habits more, your confidence grows, your roots go out deeper. And it's like, now you're not shaking my identity. I know who I am. I've practiced this.
Yeah.
Like, and I practice it and I like it and it's going good. I'm not going to be shaken.
Yeah.
You know? But I wanted to ask you a question and maybe to wrap up, or I don't know if you have more to talk about, but everything that we've talked about up to this point, I also want to bring up that compared to what somebody in church would be like, your Christ identity. Is there a difference? Is it the same thing? How would you explain that?
What do you mean? Like my identity in Christ?
Yeah, because like in church, you would hear like, you need to get your identity from Christ. You have an identity in Christ. And right now we've kind of, been talking about, just flipping the switch, embracing a different desire and a different like habits and different identity and being successful and being more confident. But would that be the same thing as your identity in Christ? Is it different? Is it the same thing? Is it the same characteristics maybe as Christ? Like, how would you explain that to somebody? Because, okay, sorry, I know you were about to say something, but because like somebody could interpret what we've set up to this up to this point, and they could twist it if they want to be like, well, I identify as whatever, XYZ.
Yeah.
And I'm embracing those habits and there it is. But like, I just want to like bring Christ back into it and just be like, is it the same thing? Is it different? What does it look like? Do we have boundaries? What do you say?
I see it similar to kind of flipping the switch, how you said it, because a new believer, they heard the gospel, and that's kind of like their switch moment.
Right.
Like from one day to the next, I am no longer a sinner. I am now a saint. And that takes a huge like, boop, right? And it goes into your identity is not going to be shaken until we've been talking about, until you practice, until you do, until you know that you don't need affirmation from anyone else, because the world is not going to give you affirmation if you're a Christian, because people are going to label you other things that you're like, no, I'm not doing it. And so the more you do the work, act like a Christian, act like a saint, your roots spread deep where you can't be shaken. So I think a lot, like we're talking about very similar things. Now, the fear, and I think I said this before, something that we have to be very mindful of is, unfortunately, we can choose something that God doesn't have planned for us. And him being a God, a merciful God, and not forcing us, like we have free will, we can decide to find our identity outside of him, which we shouldn't, because again, it goes back to the author wrote everything, like he has a purpose for us. He knows the exact reason and the value that we have and why he created us in the first place. And we can totally find our identity outside of him and say, like, I identify as this, and so I'm going to do that, and he'll let you. Like,
Yeah.
You want that? You chose that? Okay, like, go, and he'll give you. The Bible says, like, he'll give you into those like sin, and that like depravity of mind. And so, I think being intentional and saying, okay, what am I choosing to identify? What am I choosing to believe? Because you said it starts with the flip of the switch, and it starts with, do I believe that? Okay, if I believe this, what are the characteristics that this person has? And I'm going to choose it, is lining up with, like, is this godly? Is this even righteous? Is this following his path? Is this following a path of self, like righteousness and self-glory? Or is it dying to ourselves to work for his kingdom? Like, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say you can find your identity in Christ, but you can also find an identity outside of Christ, and don't go that route.
Okay. And then there's also like characteristics of Christ that we should be embracing we should be embracing, and it's probably like necessary for us to embrace to be able to carry out the purpose that he's given to us.
Yeah. And I think a lot of those go back to this theme. I think now someone can like write a report of like, okay, this is most likely what they're going to say in the future podcast, because there's like an underlying theme we keep talking about, which is not taking the easy way out.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jesus is going to take the path where people criticize him, where people are like, are you out of your mind? Like, no one does it that way. Like, no one is trying to find glory this way. Like, you're not. What are you doing? So I think that's the path where it's sacrificed, knowing that our sacrifice is going to be right now in this moment. It's going to seem like there's no purpose. Like, you're just suffering. Like, why are you even going down that road? But later we say, out of selflessness will come blessing others. And it's out of selfishness, out of comfort, out of what feels good now, where we become a burden to others or a liability to others. And so it's like, okay, what would Jesus do? Like, where would he sacrifice? Is he pointing to the Father? Like, where is the glory going towards?
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, but I really wanted to bring, I think, that identity factor in question, because it follows us when we're little kids all the way to adulthood. It's going to continue. Like, it's out of our identity that we do life. It's out of our identity that we're going to either work well, decide to start businesses, decide to take on new things. Like, it's out of our identity of who we believe we are. And so if your identity right now isn't like formed good, like, you're gonna then be that victim mentality. Like, I can't open up a business, I'm gonna fail. I can't succeed in my relationship. Like, I'm just a loser, or whatever it is. Like, it's so important to have such a great identity. And if you don't know like what your identity is, like, the Bible tells you, like, you are a saint, you are more than a conqueror, like, you are victorious, like, you are valuable. And now your job is to believe what the word of truth says and act like it now. And it's through acting like it where you'll say that confidence will build. And so much so that you're like, I am this person. Now no one can tell me otherwise. And so it's time to start like believing it and just doing it. Slowly but surely, you'll see that it's becoming who you are. And I think I'm getting passionate about that because, again, it overlaps in so many. As a parent, how can I instill identity? As a teacher, how can I instill identity? As a businesswoman, as a wife, like, how can I better my identity? And I'm glad you see the growth in me, because, I mean, regardless, I see it in myself, how we said, like, I'm confident, but it makes me want to help people and be like, you guys, like, just 6 months ago, I was nowhere here. Let's do it together. Like, let me help you and see. So if you have any questions, any topics that you want us to go more deep in, clarifications, maybe even points of disagreement, let us know in the comments. We love interacting with you guys. We love reading everything you have to say. And again, we're very humbled that you take the time to listen to us out of your busy schedules. And please share this with someone that you feel like needs to hear it. We would appreciate you liking and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next episode, bye.
See ya.